trying to keep up with the big stories, but feeling totally overwhelmed sometimes. Does that sound like you?
Yeah, the information fire hose.
Exactly. That's what we try to help.
Yeah.
Today, we're doing a deep dive into something really specific, but pretty revealing in the Sean Diddy Combs investigation. We're talking about those hotel room photos.
Right, the ones taken right when he was arrested.
Yeah, from the arrest itself. So let's start right at the beginning. Who took them? I mean, if it wasn't just like hotel security snapping pics, right?
No, definitely not. The reports are pretty clear these were taken by Homeland Security, specifically a special agent, Yasin Binda. And this happened either during the arrest or, immediately after at the Park Hyatt last September.
Homeland Security, HSI. That feels, I don't know, significant. You might think border stuff, not necessarily a New York hotel room arrest. What does their involvement kind of suggest here?
Well, typically when Homeland Security investigations, HSI, gets involved, it often signals that the feds believe the alleged crimes might cross state lines or maybe involve a bigger criminal organization.
Okay.
They handle cases with those kinds of broader, sometimes transnational elements. So, yeah, it definitely raises the perceived stakes and the potential reach of these allegations.
So these aren't just any photos then. They're official documents, basically, part of a federal case. You'd expect them to show up in court.
Oh, absolutely. The fact that they have been presented in federal court and news outlets are citing the Southern District of New York or Homeland Security, that just underlines their official status. They'd almost certainly be marked as formal exhibits.
Got it. Okay, so Homeland Security agent takes the pictures. Now let's get down to the nitty-gritty. What did these photos actually show? Because this is where it gets, well, pretty specific.
It really does. The reports detail some very particular items. One thing that stands out is the baby oil and lubricants.
Really?
Lots of mentions of that.
Baby oil.
Yeah, multiple bottles, they say. Johnson's baby oil was mentioned specifically. And also Astroglide lubricant. And these weren't just like tucked away in one spot. No, they were reportedly found in different places. In a hallway closet, apparently in a Ziploc bag, also in the bathroom. Even on a nightstand.
Wow, okay. So multiple bottles, multiple locations. That seems more than just, having one bottle on hand. What could the prosecution argue that means?
Well, finding them spread out like that, the prosecution might argue it suggests, frequent or routine use. Could potentially line up with allegations about ongoing sexual activities. It sort of implies a pattern, not just a one-off.
Right. Okay. And then there was this stuff about drugs. This pink powder. What was that about?
Yes, that was another significant find mentioned. A pink powder. And reports say it tested positive for both ketamine and MDMA.
Okay, ketamine and MDMA.
But here's another layer. This powder was apparently inside a pill bottle, and the prescription on the bottle wasn't for Sean Combs. It was prescribed to someone named Frank Black.
Frank Black?
Yeah.
That sounds like an alias, right? Why would using a fake name on a prescription bottle be something prosecutors focus on? Seems kind of obvious, maybe.
Well, legally, using an alias to get or just possess prescription meds, it immediately raises questions about intent. Were they trying to hide it? Were they using it illegally? It suggests an effort to avoid getting caught, basically. And that could have legal consequences separate from just, having the drugs themselves.
Right. It's the whole picture, not just what was found, but how it was found. Okay. What else? I remember hearing something about cash, too. Quite a bit of cash.
That's right. One of the 10 photos reportedly showed a black fanny pack, just hanging on a bedpost or off the bed.
A fanny pack, okay.
And inside that fanny pack, investigators reported finding $9,000 in cash.
$9,000 in cash, in a fanny pack.
Yeah.
How does that fit into a federal case with racketeering charges?
Yeah.
What's the potential link?
Well, in racketeering cases, prosecutors often need to show a pattern of illegal activity, right, and financial gain from it. So finding large amounts of cash, especially if it's hard to explain where it came from, can be used as evidence. Be evidence of illicit profits, proceeds from the alleged crimes, or maybe funds used to facilitate those crimes. It helps build that bigger picture of a potential criminal enterprise.
Okay, that makes sense. And then this detail about mood lighting, that seems specific. Why photograph a lamp?
Yeah, it was described as a lighting device, and Special Agent Binda, the photographer, apparently testified that this device was being used for mood lighting in the living room area of the suite. Now, on its own, maybe it seems minor, but it can add to the overall atmosphere the prosecution might be trying to depict, an environment set up for certain kinds of activities, potentially aligning with their narrative.
So you've got lubricants everywhere, specific drugs under an alias, a wad of cash, even the lighting. It really does start to paint a picture, as you said. Were there any other items noted in these 10 photos? Anything else significant?
The reports also mentioned things like an iPhone, a Louis Vuitton bag, a hard drive, and apparently some candy as well.
Candy, okay.
Yeah. Now, those items might not be directly illegal or anything, but photographing them shows how thorough the investigators were being. Documenting everything in the room at that moment, it adds to the complete inventory.
Okay, so let's pull back a bit. Thinking about the legal case, how important could all this stuff, this collection of evidence from just the hotel room, be for the prosecution?
Potentially, it could be quite important. You take the lubricants, the specific drugs found, ketamine and MDMA, plus the mood lighting. The prosecution can argue that all points towards the allegations of freak-offs and coerced sex acts.
The things mentioned in the indictment and Cassie's testimony.
Exactly. Those elements have been central to the case. And it's really the combination of these items found together right there at the time of his arrest that can build a more powerful story for a jury. More powerful than just one piece of evidence on its own.
Right. It's the convergence. How all these different pieces seem to fit together in that specific time and place.
Precisely. And the cash, like we talked about, that ties directly into the financial side, the racketeering allegations.
Yeah.
So let's wrap this up for our listener who's trying to, make sense of all the headlines. What are the absolute key takeaways from this deep dive into these specific hotel room photos?
Okay, the main things to remember are Homeland Security took 10 key photos inside Diddy's Park Hyatt hotel room during his arrest on September 16th, 2024.
Right.
These photos became public knowledge around May 19th or 20th of 2025 after being shown in court.
Got it.
And crucially, they reportedly show items like multiple bottles of baby oil and lubricant illicit drugs identified as ketamine and MDMA found in a pill bottle prescribed under the alias Frank Black, $9,000 in cash, and a mood lighting device.
Okay.
And this collection of visual evidence is seen as a pretty significant part of the prosecution's case against him for those serious charges: sex trafficking and racketeering.
So for you listening now, hopefully this deep dive gives you a much clearer handle on one specific but potentially very important piece of this whole legal saga. You're not just hearing evidence found, you now have a breakdown of the key reported details about these photos.
Yeah, it helps you understand the types of evidence the prosecution has presented, at least from this particular moment, and maybe how it connects, or how they'll argue it connects, to the overall allegations.
Definitely. So here's maybe a final thought for you to chew on. Given how detailed this evidence is, and it all comes from just one place, the hotel room, right at the moment of arrest, what might that suggest about the prosecution's strategy here? How are they building their case brick by brick? And maybe think about how the impact of this very focused evidence might compare to whatever they found in those much broader searches of his large homes later on. Something to keep in mind as this whole story keeps developing.
If you enjoyed this deep dive, please share your comments below. Remember to give us a like and subscribe for more Diddy Trial updates.